So hello, Matthew. Thank you very much for being here at ICO Grill. And let's just start with explaining what DataBroker DAO is and what problems exactly do you solve with it?
Yeah, sure. Great. And maybe if it's okay for you, I'd like to just give a little bit of context of where the project came from, because that'll help for people, your viewers to also understand what DataBroker is about and why it exists.
Okay, yes, that will
and
be.
then sure. Yeah. So to understand about DataBroker is that it's a project that actually initiated with as a request that came to us from the largest telco here in Belgium, so the largest telecommunications company. They have a team that's looking at blockchain technologies and how they can be used in the telco and IoT space. So they came to us and they asked us, can you help us to build a platform that will enable us to offer a monetization strategy for our clients that have IoT sensors. Now, what that means is that the telco came to us with a request to address one of their client needs, and that need was, of course, in a lot of countries, telecommunications providers play a major role in providing connectivity services for IoT devices. Essentially, that's exactly the situation for this telco that approached us. They said we're looking for a strategy that will enable us to give a monetization strategy to our clients. How can you help us with that? And that's where the whole thing with the project of DataBroker got initiated. So what is it exactly? DataBroker is a decentralized platform to enable IoT sensor owners to monetize their data in a marketplace. So what that provides is the facility for a matchmaking between those that have data and those that want to buy data. And that's where DataBroker is the bit in the middle. So if you look at the way that data is, how does this area of IoT work today? Well, it's a market that for IoT sensors that's kind of essentially doubling every year and a half or 2 years. So back in 2015, there were about $600 billion per year spent on by companies that are companies and governments primarily that are installing IoT sensors on roads, on towers, on buildings. Whether they want to measure the weather, the changes in the environment, water levels in a dam or reserve, or they want to measure traffic congestion, for example. There are all these. Literally billions of sensors that are deployed right now. It's estimated to be around 9 billion sensors this year, and that's expected to go to around 32 billion within the next 3 years. That'll be deployed globally. So if you take, and if you're familiar with the concept of smart cities and how smart cities are powered, well, it's all data driven. So of course you need to have sensors that are taking readings of what's happening in the city in order to determine, for example, one kind of edge case that I've come across is determine when my garbage should be picked up. There are sensors that will say how full a container is, so that instead of driving a truck throughout the city to find, to pick up garbage when the waste bin is empty, well, they just go to the ones that are full. So it's for all of these things that improve the quality of life in a city. There are sensors that are driving this, or where the open parking spots in the city, providing that kind of an intelligence. These are sensor-driven services that are being created in smart cities. And the interesting thing is that nowadays, if you look up, if you put smart in front of pretty much any sector, you'll find that, let's say, this concept of deploying sensors in order to gain intelligence, in order to improve the efficiency of something, that's pretty much across the board happening. So you talk about smart mobility, you talk about smart agriculture, smart buildings, smart cities is another one I've talked about. But essentially, these are, or smart factories, smart manufacturing, all that stuff. It's so the amount of data that's being generated today is truly staggering, and that is in fact an accelerating trend. Now, what happens with that data, and what is the utility of the DataBroker DAO platform, is that the way that that data lives a one-use life today. So I use it. The data is always streaming off this thing. I take that data point, and I use it for my purpose right now, which might be to, if it's a smart farming thing, to improve the yield of my crops, so I gain 2 or 3% by having a more efficient farming process. But that data then goes, what happens with that data? It goes from my, what we used to call data warehouses, now then they were being called data silos, and now a more common phrase is data graveyards. So you have this process of data that's being generated that's valuable, but it's only being used once. And so what DataBroker DAO does as a platform.
So you mean that it's deleted afterwards, after it's been used, and it's no longer stored anywhere?
Well, most companies will store this on premises or in the cloud, wherever they store their data. But the thing is, they use it once, and then a lot of companies or governments, they'll store this data for 5, 7, 10 years, and never look at it again. And that's literally what happens. And I'm not going to say with every case, but I think probably 70 or 80% of the cases, data lives this one-use life, and that's really a wasted. There's a lot more value that can be derived from data than just a once-off improvement. So what this, and DataBroker is a platform that allows the sensor owner to connect their sensor data streams and sell the data in a streaming format to interested buyers, which is the other side of the marketplace. So of course the question is, who wants to buy data? Again, back to the smart city example, what's happening in a lot of smart city initiatives right now is that the municipality is forming what they call private-public partnerships with large sensor manufacturers. So you might have a city like Riyadh in Saudi Arabia that's partnering with Cisco. Cisco will deploy sensors. Then Cisco is able to monetize the data and create value-adding services based on that. So the smart city initiatives are kind of locking themselves into with one vendor, or maybe multiple vendors. But at any rate, who's defining what are the services that are going to be value adding for that city to improve the quality of life? Well, it's some company that has their for Riyadh in that example, it's some company that has their head office in San Francisco or or in Frankfurt or wherever this large manufacturer might be located. But they're the ones that are defining the value adding services. And my contention, and I think one of the things that excite me about the platform is that I believe that the people that know best about how to improve the quality of life in a city are the ones that actually live there. And the ones that should be able to monetize the data that's generated from their city, well, those are also the people that live there. So I think that there's exactly what does it do, the platform do? It provides access to this data so that locally driven value-adding services can be created. And those services can be then monetized by the entrepreneurs in that city. And I think that that's, at least in my view of the world, that's a much more equitable way to improve the quality of life in city and define who's benefiting from it, not just the citizens, but the entrepreneurs that are active and living there. Well, they should be the ones that are benefiting from it. So that's sort of what DataBroker is and why do we need it. I think it's really democratizing access to data so that locally driven or local service providers can create value-adding services for the communities that they actually live in. That's why I think it's needed. Now, there are, of course, other ways it could be done. There are open data initiatives that are also looking at providing open access to data. The problem that I see with that, and it's been proven time and again, I think, with a lot of these initiatives, not all of them, so they're great from a philosophical perspective. However, they're not economically sustainable because the incentives aren't there for someone who say I'm a company, a privately owned company, and I have sensors, and I'm subscribed to this open data initiative, and I change my sensors, or I no longer need that data, so I stop maintaining it. But there are people depending on it. So then I have this system whereby the people that are depending on that data, they want me to continue maintaining it, but I've got no economic incentive to do so. And that's where the token economics behind DataBroker serve in a decentralized way a much more effective and sustainable system to incentivize the owners of sensors in order to continue maintaining the sensors that others are then depending on.
So can you speak a little bit more about the token use case behind the platform? What will be its value and purpose?
Yeah, so it's a utility token. So I assume the viewers will know very well the difference between utility and security tokens. But the utility token and the utility it provides within the platform, it's really twofold. One is for the unit of exchange in the platform. So data, if I want to buy, say, let's imagine you have sensors about the temperature on the top of your building, and I want to buy that data. I buy it using the DTX token. The second function is for staking. So what as a sensor owner, one of the biggest questions that will come up in buying data is how do you ensure the quality of data that's being sold? And again, that's where token economics play a big part here in incentivizing, and from the incentivization that can be done using the token. You as a sensor owner stake, let's say 10 DTX tokens against the quality of the data coming off your sensor. Now, me as the buyer, if I think that I've subscribed to your data feed, and I think that the data quality is not good for some reason, I can claim against what you've staked against the. Of course, at that point, I have to also put up tokens. Otherwise, it becomes a strange incentive for buyers to just start claiming against everybody. But no, you have to stake tokens against if you want to make a claim. So the second, and then there's an arbitration process, which is the only remaining, let's say, somewhat centralized component of the platform is that arbitration process. We're looking at ways to combat that and to decentralize also the arbitration process, again, by incentivizing parties that might be interested in playing a role, or let's say one of the things we're looking at right now are how we can use neural networks in time in order to support the arbitration process. We're not yet there, but we want to get rid of that last centralized.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What do you mean by using neural networks?
Yeah, so if you have I was speaking to a gentleman about 2 weeks ago. He's got a company focusing on AI and neural networks, and when I explained the challenge that we have in the platform in the last somewhat centralized component, we're trying to let's say make or remove the need for a centralized component. He was explaining to me about neural networks, and I have to be honest, I'm not an expert in that. But we are building an alliance. It's around 26 members now, and adding members like this who can create other elements of the platform and add their technologies into it to improve the quality of the platform. So neural networks, and as he explained it to me, and again, I'm not an expert, but he was explaining that the neural network can learn, basically predict what the outcome or what the reading from a sensor should be. And over time, when you have a large enough data set, the reliability or the accuracy of those predictions will get better and better. So when I could foresee in the way he was describing it, a combination of a neural network that may replace the need for that arbitration process in a centralized way, or it could be used to alert data buyers when data anomalies are taking place. So then they can be alerted, or the sensor owner can be alerted that there's an anomaly in the data. Please have a look, to alleviate and to minimize, let's say, the number of conflicts that happen about the quality of the data. So there were a couple of, and like I said, it's a new subject to me, and I think that it's something that that's why we're good at what we're good at, and our alliance members are good at what they're good at, and we're always looking for new alliance members that can add more value to our ecosystem.
Okay, so speaking about the token sale and the token, can you share what's your current status of it? Mm-hmm. And also, what regulations are you under? Where are you registered? And who can participate in the token sale?
Yeah, okay. So I guess first on the status of the sale. So we've done the public sale has been running for about a month and a half now, I believe. We're going to be very soon making an announcement of that related to that. So stay tuned, and I'll provide an update to you so you can update your viewers as well. The status of it at this point, we have a hard cap of 108 million tokens that we want to distribute in the sale. We're about, I think, when I checked earlier today, around 26-27% of the target. So that we're progressing quite okay. As we said, we're past the soft cap that we needed to have to go ahead with the project. So we're not there yet, but still plugging away, and we've got a couple of things we're working on to further enhance sales before we close it. So that's on, and then about, so that's kind of on the status. Now we get a lot of questions, and I just spent last week in the US, and the week before that in another part where the regulatory questions were coming up quite a lot, of course. And what we are as a utility token, and there's two parts to this, a bit of a nuanced answer. We're working with a company that does the KYC procedures for us. They're an expert in KYC. It's a company called IdentityMind. So they have been doing KYC stuff, not blockchain based, but traditional technologies for years and years and years. We integrated their solution into our platform, and of course we ask them quite often. And with that, it's a global solution, and they do specialize in ICOs and token sales for this specific product of theirs. And their lawyers are keeping on top of which jurisdictions we can be sold, the token can be sold in, which ones it can't. And based on the guidance we have from them, there are no restrictions on who can buy, but you do need to pass the KYC process. So it will ask a number of questions that will screen, and if so, as long as the interested buyer gets through the KYC process, the token is available to them.
Okay. What about U.S. citizen,
Yep.
Canada, China, those as well? Okay.
Yep. So we don't. If they pass the KYC process, then it's fine. And there are blocking elements in it for some jurisdictions. The U.S. and China are not those blocked jurisdictions, but where there are international.
Do they also do AML or just the KYC?
AML as well. Yep.
Okay. Cool. So how are you planning on using the proceeds from the token sale? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, great. So we have this. I should have had that in front of me right now. But the biggest, for anyone who's seen the DataBroker DAO website, you'll know that we have and have had for over a year now already a working platform. So where we differ a bit, and the use of proceeds is more geared towards rollout of the product more than actually building it. So we're far beyond the white paper phase. We've had an MVP back in February of 2017. Actually, January 2017 was the first time I displayed it publicly. Mm-hmm. We've been iterating on the product since throughout 2017. In March, we released the latest version where we incorporated a number of features like mapping, so you can actually place the sensors on a map. That makes it easier for a buyer to locate the data they're looking for. Also integrated features like the token curated registry, so that for the staking process, when if I stake, let's say the more you stake against your token, the higher you come in search results. So it's kind of what they call a token curated registry. We added that in the March release. So yeah, the use of proceeds are there's a part for further development, and the roadmap is available in the white paper as well to see the additional feature enhancements that are planned out until I think the end of 2019. We have the roadmap out until, but I think it's about 50% of the funds are earmarked for commercialization of the product. So really bringing it to market. So we are going to, also important dates from a platform perspective. In June, we are going to the mainnet with the platform. So it's already in a closed beta. We will be going to mainnet in June. So then one of the, and when I talk about the commercialization of the platform for end users, what I talk about there primarily are getting sensor owners on board, and also getting telecommunications providers, or gateway operators as they're referred to, because it's a bit broader than telco operators, but the gateway operators that are controlling the network of connectivity. So most of the efforts are, the funds are earmarked for that rollout plan.
So when you say that you already have a working product, do you have any sensor data owners on board already, or it's just a demo?
So we have about, I think it's close to 5,000 sensors that are already on the platform. There is a bit of a mix. Some of those are not. Some we added a few extra ones for testing purposes. Those are real sensors, but not that there are some open data sets that are available. Some basic data sets. So we're we have incorporated a few of those into it, but we are around 5,000 sensors that are on the platform right now.
Okay. So what kind of partnerships are you currently seeking or developing? Are you partnering with any organizations that might be using the platform?
Yeah, definitely. And the section on the what we call the DataBroker DAO Alliance is we've got there. This is not updated on the website, but there are a number of other ones. When we talk about the alliance, these are stakeholders, whether in data monetization, let me put it that way, whether they're the company that I talked about with neural networks and AI, or companies like one in in India that's called Uptix. They're a hardware manufacturer for air quality sensors. So they already have an active network of sensors deployed across several cities in India, and they're selling that data now back to the government. And they're very eager to get on board now as well. Excuse me. To provide them with another income stream for the data that they're already generating. And you'll notice that a lot of these companies, they're not, let's say, big globally known ones. Like Uptix, not many people will have heard of them outside of the cities in India, I suppose, where they're active. But there's interesting things like if you were to look at some of the stakeholders like Option, if you go to their website and check out their ecosystem and who's using their technology, it becomes very interesting to see how far we're going with the alliance, because Option is a company that produces the hardware for these gateway operators. So they are producing, our model is based upon working together with the gateway operators, which are quite often telcos. This company Option is the company. It's going one step further back in the supply chain. They're the ones that actually produce the hardware that those gateway operators use. And they're very eager to also find a way that they can embed our technology in their hardware, so that it becomes more of an out-of-the-box solution for some of the biggest telcos in the world. So again, I think the only, let's say, globally known name that's broadly from a consumer perspective well known is Panasonic. But they are, they're equally valuable to the ecosystem, and companies like Option have major leverage impact that we can generate from working together with them.
Great. And in terms of competitors, do you have any within the blockchain space or outside, maybe?
Yeah, and I think we mentioned a couple that there are competitors and companies that are doing things in IoT and blockchain. So if we're more the bigger names that we get asked about, are you trying to compete with these guys? There are usually ones that are doing things with IoT and blockchain, and if you take IOTA, for example, that's one that early on we were quite often asked about that. Are you doing the same thing as them? And the answer is flatly no. They're doing something quite different than what we're doing.
But they also have a marketplace, I would say.
Yeah,
they're working on the marketplace. So
sure.
they're competing with you, not you with them.
Well, what they've done, yeah, well, maybe I should park it there. Otherwise, I'll annoy the people at IOTA, because I've done that more than once already. But I think they were inspired by what we're doing, to be honest. But okay, that's what they. But what they're doing is essentially their approach or their philosophy. And I really hope that they succeed someday in actually achieving what they set out to achieve. It'd be great for IoT devices and connectivity, and for the machine-to-machine world that we're evolving towards. If they can actually pull it off, great. I'm kudos to them. I wish them the best of luck in that. But essentially what they're doing is saying, let's replace the infrastructure that makes IoT work and in an autonomous way, machine-to-machine. Let's replace all that infrastructure. And let's do a bunch of other things. And by the way, we have a marketplace. That's essentially, why I don't consider them a competitor is for that reason. And the other reason is that, they're the IOTA network, let's say, publishes or promotes itself as a decentralized and open network. So if it is a decentralized and open network, when they start to actually have meaningful market share of devices that are using their network, well, then we'll integrate it. So they may have their marketplace with IOTA sensor data, but we will have a marketplace with every other kind of network's data plus IOTA plugged into it. So it's more of a, do I see them as a competitor? Not really. I see them actually in our model, what we call the gateway operator. That's actually IOTA is a gateway operator in our model. So it's where we pull the information out of. That's where the two fit together. So it's more complementary in the longer term. But at this point in time, if you were to ask the people at IOTA how many sensors are actually today using their network, that's about how many are using it. And if you compare that to the currently 9 billion devices that are connected around the world, well, they've got a long way to go before they start to claim any meaningful market share. And that's when they do, great. And I hope that someday they are. But I think that's 3 to 4, maybe even 5 or 6 years out. By then, we'll be far ahead, obviously. So that's the story with IOTA. I hope they achieve what they're doing. When it's meaningful, we'll actually make an integration and pull the data and make the data saleable on our platform as well. The other ones, I think, but if I cut to who I think is the most direct competition, there's Streamer. Streamer is another one. They have been working on their project for about, I think it's the first time I heard about it was probably about a year and a half ago. So they're probably busy with it for a while before that. But Streamer is really a direct competitor. Now, what we do a bit different than Streamer is Streamer focuses, as from what I can tell from my vantage point, is they don't really say what kind of data should be sold on the platform. So if I want to publish things like my Facebook data and I want to sell that, then I can do that. So they're looking at a different type of data, which is very valuable, of course. I mean, don't get me wrong. But our approach is to stay away from that. We don't want to be into the personal data space. I think that with data protection laws and the direction that it's going in Europe in particular, I would prefer to let somebody else fall on their sword and then figure out how best to do it. We'll stick to industrial IoT, environmental IoT. And the interesting thing, if you look at the 9 billion sensors that are deployed globally, 90% of it is for industrial and environmental purposes. It's only 10% is personal. So if you talk about smart home or Fitbit, these kinds of devices, your Swarm thing in your house, or your smart fridge and all that sort of stuff, that's only 10% of less than 10% of the data that's out there today. So we focus on the bigger piece of the pie and try to let's say minimize the liability from a personal data perspective by excluding it from our platform. So Streamer's got a slightly broader focus. They're doing great. I was at Consensus last week, where Streamer had quite a big display of what they're working on, and it's impressive. They're doing good things. So that's one company that I know for sure is really a direct competitor. And out in Korea, there's HDAC, which is another one, and HDAC has a similar offering to us as well. I haven't had a good insight into how far along they are from a development perspective. I know they got well funded, but they're another one that I have on my radar to keep an eye on to see how are we differentiating between ourselves and them. But yeah, the thing that if you look at the size of the addressable market when you talk about IoT sensor data, I think we need about 10 more companies to step into the space and be competitors, because it's just so big. That's in our let's say forecasting and business plan for the platform, we are targeting to have less than 1%, really like half of 1% of the sensors that will be on our platform. So there's huge potential here. There's more than enough room for at least 10 more companies to step into it. And we're just happy that we're going to be one of the first.
So speaking of that, how is the platform going to sustain after the ICO? How do you make profit?
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So then you get into the, when data is sold on the platform, what happens to the proceeds? And as with today, how does it work? I've got these sensors. I'm using it for my own purposes to optimize whatever it is that I'm optimizing or gain intelligence. The data stops there, stays with me. I get my 2% or 3% operational efficiencies, and then it dies, the data. So there's what we create with the platform is a new income stream for the sensor owners. So they have a new thing that they can either invest in buying new sensors, or new software that can support in interpreting the data that's coming out of it, But at any rate, it's a completely new income stream. Now that the income coming out of it is split in the way that the smart contracts are programmed. It's splitting 80% back to the sensor owner. So they go from zero income to 80% of the revenue coming back. 10% goes to the network operator or the gateway operator. So if that's a telecommunications company or that's an independent network operator, then they are taking a 10% fee for allowing the provision of the data through their network and acting as a kind of a central point to stream information in an efficient way. And 10% goes to DataBroker. So you have an 80-10-10 split between the key stakeholders.
Okay.
So that's
cool. So as we're coming to a close, would you like to share what are your biggest challenges and risks ahead?
Yeah, I think in terms of challenges for the platform, there is, and talking, like I spent more than a year as we had the platform first version of it back in January of 2017. I've spent most of the year of 2017 and into 2018 talking to end users. So first of all, I'm met with great enthusiasm about the product. Otherwise, we wouldn't be launching it. So I have a really good, strong feeling with the and a very strong view on the product market fit analysis. In terms of the challenges to it being a success, I would say the biggest one, and we're going to, and it's not specific to our platform, it's with every utility token and every platform that has a utility token, including or even the Ethereum network, for example. It's adoption of the use of non-fiat currencies. That's the biggest single obstacle that I think is facing every project that is working with a utility coin or token, and that's let's say the usability. How broadly can it be used? A lot of our stakeholders are enterprise and companies for providing data and also buying data. Also, let's say educational for if researchers want to buy the data so they can train their AI in order to figure out what they're going to do, or that this is a source for them. But how do they get the DTX token, and how do they make it work? How do they get the DTX token? And for people that are in the crypto space, of course, this is trivial. We do it all the time. But for the let's say the non-crypto savvy community, this is something different. It's something new. I have to. What do you mean? I have to go to an exchange to buy the DTX, and then only then I can use it in the platform. So I think that this is going to be overcoming that will be the single biggest challenge, to be honest. In terms of the market potential, it's there. So I don't see a whole lot of challenges there. It's just having the manpower to commercialize it. But in terms of usage of the platform, it's familiarizing, let's say, the stakeholders of the platform, the users of the DTX, familiarizing them with how to get the DTX. So it's a non-trivial process for most enterprises. And as we evolve over the next couple of years, and let's say tokens are a more common way of exchanging, then the barrier will start to decline. And again, that's not specific to DataBroker. It's kind of a general industry thing. So, but that's the single biggest one, to be honest.
Yeah, there is for sure a learning curve for a lot of people to start using these products. Okay, well, Matthew, thank you very much for this conversation. If you want to say any final words to the community, you're welcome to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I would just say, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and presenting me to your community. And I think that there's a lot of literature or reports that are coming out now that are referring to data as the new oil or the new gold, in the sense that it's going to fuel, especially in the oil analogy, it's going to fuel every industry that we know in the future. So that's kind of the opportunity I'm presenting, is that if you believe that with that philosophy that data is where the future is heading, then please take a close look at DataBroker, because what we're providing is the infrastructure layer to provide access to that data. So what's going to, we're essentially creating the fuel pump. That's what we're creating for the data industry.